It's the silence that's killing me. It's a Tuesday night, 9:47 p.m., and the only sound is the low, mournful hum of the refrigerator. It's a noise I never even noticed when Michael was here, when his presence. His soft humming along to a song in his head, the clicking of his keyboard, the gentle thud of his feet on the hardwood floor filled all the empty spaces. Now that refrigerator hum isn't just a sound. It's a physical presence, a deafening roar that presses in on me from all sides, a constant reminder of the profound, crushing absence he left behind. His side of the closet is a gaping wound. I've stood in front of it 3 times now just staring. The neat row of his shirts, blue, gray, another blue, is gone. His worn-out sneakers that I always complained about leaving by the door are gone. The heavy wool coat he only wore twice a year is gone. All that's left is a small collection of empty hangers, clinking together like skeletal chimes whenever a draft blows through the room. They mock me. The wall above the sofa looks pale and sick, scarred by the faint, ghostly rectangles where our photos used to hang. Our trip to the coast, my graduation, that stupid selfie we took with ice cream on our noses. He took them all, frames and all. He didn't just remove himself, he erased us. Even his stupid, overwatered fern is gone from the windowsill. I hated that plant. I told him it was slowly dying, but he insisted it just needed emotional support. The empty ceramic pot he left behind feels like a personal insult. He took everything that was his, meticulously, quietly, leaving behind an apartment that feels less like a home and more like a carefully curated museum of a dead relationship. My thumb is raw, it's literally throbbing from swiping down, refreshing the location app on my phone, again and again and again. It's a desperate, pathetic prayer with every swipe, a ritual for a god I don't believe in. Please let there be a glitch. Please let the blue dot snap back to our street. Please let me hear his keys in the lock. But the little blue dot that is supposed to be him, supposed to be here with me, is stubbornly fixed on a street I've never heard of, in a part of the city we never go to. It's been there for 5 hours now. He's not at a friend's house, he's not at a hotel, he's at a place. A new home, he actually did it. He's gone, and all I can do is stare at this hollowed out space and wonder how I single-handedly, with my own 2 hands, turned our home into a tomb. He's not coming back. A part of me knows he's not, but my stupid, broken brain won't let my thumb stop refreshing. It's the only connection to him I have left. A tiny blue dot on a map a million miles away. I remember meeting him like it was a scene from a movie. A really cheesy, cliché movie, but it felt profoundly real back then. I was a complete wreck, just 6 months out from ending things with a guy who had turned gaslighting into an Olympic sport and infidelity into a casual hobby. I was a walking nerve ending, convinced every man was a liar, a walking, breathing collection of red flags just waiting to be unfurled. I was working part-time at a dusty old bookstore, mostly to have a reason to get out of bed and interact with something other than my own spiraling thoughts. He came in on a rainy afternoon, looking for some obscure philosophy book I'd never heard of. He had this calm, steady way about him that felt like an anchor in my churning sea of anxiety. His voice was deep and quiet, and he didn't just look at you, he actually saw you. His eyes didn't skate over you, they rested, patient and curious. We talked for an hour, leaning against a shelf of biographies. We talked about books, of course, but also about the city, about how terrible the coffee at the shop next door was, about his job as a data analyst, which he somehow made sound interesting. When I finally found his book tucked away on a bottom shelf, he just stood there holding it, a small, gentle smile on his face that made his whole face light up. He asked me out. My immediate gut reaction was a visceral no. The thought of a first date, of that raw vulnerability, of having to decide whether to trust someone again, made my stomach clench with a familiar, acidic dread. I had a whole speech prepared in my head for moments like this, a polite but firm rejection. But something in his eyes, a kindness that felt genuine, not predatory, an earnestness that seemed completely devoid of agenda, made me hear the word yes come out of my own mouth, much to my surprise. He was my harbor, that's the only word for it. In those early days, he was the calm after the storm I'd been living in for years. He knew about my ex, about the constant checking of phones, the obsessive search for clues, the lies, and the final, gut-wrenching discovery that had completely shattered my ability to trust. I didn't dump it all on him at once, but it came out in pieces, in late-night confessions whispered in the dark, my voice trembling with the ghost of that old pain. I'd flinch if his phone buzzed too late at night, or my heart would hammer in my chest if he said he was just out with friends. He never got angry. He never told me I was being irrational. He'd just turn his phone over, show me the screen, and say, "It's just my mom asking about dinner on Sunday, see?" He was the one who suggested sharing his location. I never even had to ask. One night after I'd had a small, quiet panic attack because he was 20 minutes late coming home from work, he just took my phone, downloaded the app, and set it all up. "So you don't have to worry," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "You can see where I am anytime, no secrets." It felt like the most romantic gesture in the world. He was so patient, so endlessly, reassuringly patient. He was the antidote to the poison I'd been living with. He built a fortress around me, brick by brick, with his consistency, his transparency, and his gentle reassurances. He made me believe, for the first time in a long time, that I could be safe. I just didn't realize that even the strongest fortress can become a prison if the person inside forgets that the walls were meant to keep danger out, not to keep a good man in. That feeling of safety didn't last. Or rather, my need for it grew cancerous, metastasizing from a desire for reassurance into an insatiable hunger for control. The fortress he built became my command center, and the location app, his beautiful, trusting gift, became my primary weapon. At first, it was just a comforting glance. Seeing his little blue dot at his office building, a steady electronic pulse, was a digital pat on the head that told me everything was okay. It was my anchor in the middle of a workday filled with my own insecurities. But then my old anxieties, the ones I thought he had soothed into remission, began to creep back in, whispering their familiar, ugly poison. "He's too good to be true. It's only a matter of time." It started small, insidiously so. I'd check his location when he was on his way home from work just to time dinner. Then I started checking it during his lunch break just to see where he went. Soon, I was checking it a dozen, then 50, then 100 times a day. It became a compulsion, a nervous tick my thumb performed without my conscious thought, a constant, frantic search for anomalies. The app was the first thing I looked at in the morning, before I even said good morning to him, and the last thing I saw before I fell into a restless sleep. The faint blue glow of his location burned onto the back of my eyelids. The interrogations began subtly, cloaked in the guise of casual conversation. "Oh, you went to that new coffee shop today, how was it?" I'd ask, my voice light, feigning an interest I didn't feel, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I waited to see if he'd lie. He never did, he'd just look up from his book a little confused. "Yeah, the line at the usual place was a block long, it was okay, how'd you know?" And I'd wave it off with a breezy, just a lucky guess, feeling a sick, temporary wave of relief. But my paranoia was a hungry beast. Every truth he told only made it demand more proof. The casual questions morphed into full-blown cross-examinations, held every evening at our dinner table, which started to feel less like a shared space and more like an interrogation room. If he stayed 15 minutes late at the office, it wasn't just work anymore. In my mind, it was a conspiracy. "Who were you with? Was Amelia from accounting there?" "I saw she liked your post on LinkedIn, I know she likes you." He'd set his fork down and sigh, a deep, weary sound that should have been a screaming red flag. "Serena, we were finishing the quarterly report. My whole team was there, my boss was there, please." His patience began to fray, worn thin by the constant, grating friction of my suspicion. His answers became shorter, clipped. The gentle confusion in his eyes was replaced by a kind of dull, resigned exhaustion that broke my heart even as I caused it. He stopped offering detailed explanations and started just saying, "It was just work," or "We had a meeting." That, of course, only fueled my panic. Vague answers were proof of guilt. His silence wasn't the silence of a man with nothing to hide. In my twisted logic, it was the silence of a man who was hiding everything. He was retreating into himself, building his own walls against my siege. With every accusation I hurled, he took another step back. I saw it happening. I saw the light in his eyes dimming, but I couldn't stop myself. I was so terrified of the past repeating itself that I was strangling our present. I told myself I was protecting us, protecting our love from the dangers of the world. But I wasn't. I was just a zookeeper, rattling the bars of a cage I'd built around the kindest man I'd ever known, completely oblivious to the fact that he was slowly, quietly, figuring out how to unlock the door. The breaking point came the day before our 3-year anniversary. We had plans, reservations at the Italian place where we had our first real date, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the candles stuck in wine bottles. I'd even bought a new dress. For a few days, I had actually managed to suppress the paranoia, allowing myself to feel a flicker of the old excitement. It felt fragile like a soap bubble, and I was terrified of it popping. Around 4 p.m., he texted me, "Hey, so sorry, something's come up at work. A server crashed. I'm going to be a couple of hours late. Don't wait for me for dinner, I love you." Instantly, the bubble burst. A cold dread washed over me so intense it was nauseating. A server crashed. It was the most cliché, unbelievable excuse I had ever heard. My mind, conditioned by years of suspicion, immediately rejected it. I opened the location app. His blue dot wasn't at his office. It was downtown in the jewelry district. It hovered there motionless for 34 minutes. That was it, the confirmation. Every fear I'd ever had solidified into a jagged block of ice in my chest. The past wasn't just repeating itself, it was mocking me. He was buying a gift, but not for me. It was for her, Amelia from accounting, or some other faceless woman who was getting the real Michael, while I got the excuses and the lies. I didn't cry, I went numb. I methodically moved through the apartment, the anger a low, steady hum beneath my skin. He came home around 8:30 p.m. The moment he walked through the door, I saw it. He looked exhausted, but there was a light in his eyes, a secret, happy energy he was trying to contain. He was holding a small, unmarked paper bag. That was the final nail in the coffin. Hey, he said, his smile faltering slightly when he saw the look on my face. God, what a day, I'm so sorry about. I didn't let him finish. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the map of the jewelry district, his blue dot's history traced out like a prosecutor's evidence. My voice was eerily calm, sharp and cold as a shard of glass. A server crashed, I asked. Did the server crash and land in the middle of a Tiffany's? Who is she, Michael? Just tell me. After everything, just give me the respect of the truths. Are you buying her a little anniversary gift too? The light in his eyes didn't just dim, it went out. It was like watching a candle be snuffed out in an instant. The exhaustion on his face collapsed into something deeper, something hollow. He looked at my phone, then at my face, and the secret excitement he'd walked in with was replaced by a profound, soul-deep disappointment. He didn't get angry, he didn't defend himself. He just looked at me, and for the first time, it was like he was looking at a stranger he didn't recognize and didn't want to know. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. He just stood there in the doorway, holding that little paper bag, and said nothing at all. The silence that followed my accusation was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It stretched for an eternity, thick and suffocating. He just stood there, his face a blank mask of something I couldn't read. Defeat? Resignation? He finally just shook his head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, and walked past me into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind him. I slept on the couch. I kept waiting for him to come out, to yell, to argue, to do something. But there was nothing, just that terrifying, absolute silence. The next morning, when I woke up, he was already gone. I told myself he'd just left early for work to avoid me. It was easier than confronting the alternative. I went through my own morning routine in a daze. The anger from the night before curdling into a sour mix of self-righteousness and a tiny, gnawing seed of doubt. I went to my job at the bookstore, mechanically scanning books and smiling at customers, all while my phone sat screen down on the counter, a dormant bomb. When I got home that evening, I knew something was wrong the second I put my key in the lock. There was a stillness in the air, a profound emptiness that you can feel in your bones. I stepped inside and it hit me. His coat wasn't on the hook by the door, his scuffed sneakers were gone. My heart started to pound a frantic, panicked rhythm. I walked through the apartment like a ghost. The bathroom counter was cleared of his things, his toothbrush, his shaving cream, the specific soap I always complained smelled like pine needles. In the living room, his video game console was gone, leaving a neat, dust-free rectangle on the media stand. His favorite mug wasn't in the dish drainer. I walked into the bedroom, my legs feeling like lead, and I saw it, the gaping wound in the closet. His drawers were empty. The books on his nightstand were gone. There was no note, no text. No final, angry phone call. He had just vanished. He had packed up 3 years of his life, the life we had built together, and evaporated. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I sent a text. Michael, where are you? What is happening? No reply. I sent another. This isn't funny. Call me? Nothing. I tried to call him. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. He'd blocked my number. In a final, desperate act, I tried his social media. His profiles were gone. Deactivated. He hadn't just left me. He had surgically removed himself from my life, cutting every possible tie with a cold, terrifying precision. He had become a ghost. For 2 days, I lived in a fog of disbelief and panic. I barely ate. I called out of work. I spent hours just sitting on the floor, staring at the empty spaces he used to occupy, replaying that final confrontation in my head. My brain kept trying to twist the narrative to make him the villain. How could he just leave? Without a word, it was cruel, cowardly. He was punishing me for having a moment of insecurity, an insecurity he knew was born from trauma. The anger felt better than the crushing weight of regret, so I clung to it. On the third day, a frantic, desperate energy took over. I couldn't accept the silence. There had to be a reason, a clue, something I had missed. I started tearing the apartment apart, not cleaning but searching. I went through old mail, junk drawers, the pockets of clothes I hadn't worn in months, looking for I don't even know what. A piece of him, an explanation. That's when I found his old winter coat, the heavy wool one he hated, crammed in the back of the hall closet. He must have forgotten it in his haste. My heart leaped. It was a mistake. He'd have to come back for it. As I pulled it out, my fingers brushed against something stiff in the pocket, a piece of paper. It was a receipt from a jewelry store. The date printed at the top was from 3 days ago, the day of our fight. My hands trembled as I read the details. It was a deposit slip for a custom-ordered engagement ring. The description listed a simple, elegant band with a small, ethically sourced sapphire, my birthstone. At the bottom of the slip, next to the specifications, was a handwritten note from the jeweler. Size 6.5 as requested. My ring size, the small paper bag he was holding, it wasn't a gift for someone else, it was a plan for us. The air left my lungs in a single, ragged gasp. The receipt fluttered from my numb fingers. The truth of what I had done, the sheer, catastrophic scale of my mistake, crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. I had stood on the precipice of everything I'd ever wanted, and out of sheer, blind terror, I had set it all on fire. Later that evening, my best friend Jess came over. She found me on the couch, wrapped in his old coat, the receipt clutched in my hand. I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of sobs and self-hatred. I showed her the receipt. I cried about how I'd ruined everything, how I'd pushed away the best man I'd ever known. I expected her to comfort me, to tell me he'd forgive me, but she didn't. She sat there listening patiently, her expression unreadable. When I finally fell silent, exhausted from crying, she just looked at me for a long moment. There was no anger in her eyes, just a deep, uncomfortable sadness. "Serena," she said, her voice gentle but firm, creating a distance between us I'd never felt before. "I love you. You know that, but honestly, have you ever thought about what it must have been like to be him? To live like that, to have every move you make tracked and questioned. To feel like you're constantly on trial for a crime you didn't commit? It sounds exhausting." Her words weren't an attack, but they landed harder than any insult. She wasn't taking his side. She was just holding up a mirror, and for the first time, I couldn't look away from the reflection. That conversation with Jess was the end of my delusion. The anger I'd been clinging to evaporated, leaving only the cold, hard reality of my actions. I am the villain of this story. There is no one else to blame. Now I'm trapped. I spend my days in this hollowed-out apartment, this mausoleum I built for our relationship. The silence is a constant companion. Sometimes I'll be in the kitchen and I'll turn to tell him something funny I saw online, and the empty air hits me like a slap in the face. The grief is a physical thing, a heavy weight that sits in my chest and makes it hard to breathe. My phone is a torture device. I've written him a dozen novels in my notes app. Long, rambling apologies that detail every ounce of my regret. I explain about the receipt, about how I know how badly I messed up, how I would do anything to go back to that moment in the doorway and just let him speak. Then a wave of rage will wash over me. Rage at him for being so silent, for not fighting for us, for just disappearing. And I'll write a different message, one filled with accusations of cowardice. "You could have just talked to me, Michael. You didn't have to run." I never send any of them. I just type and delete, a constant, looping cycle of begging and blaming. I am at war with myself, and I am losing spectacularly. I cling to his old coat like a child's security blanket, trying to inhale the last faint traces of his scent. I hold the jewelry store receipt in my hand, tracing the letters of his name, the paper now soft and worn from my desperate touch. It's the proof of his love and the evidence of my crime, all on one flimsy piece of paper. The apartment is quiet, the blue dot on my phone is gone for good, and I am utterly, completely alone in the ruins I created.